Folks, it's my coach used to say it's go-to time. It's go time now.
Welcome to the Kyle Olson Show. Let's start today with a question. Have you ever heard of a major political party repeatedly demonstrating they hate America? I mean, just rubbing our faces in it, and then asking you, the voter, to put them in charge of the country? Here is the opening of the Democratic National Convention this week.
Many of the videos and pictures you're about to see were recorded before COVID, which is why the kids are not social distancing. However, the audio was recorded over the past month. You may rise or kneel if you are able, per your preference.
A major political party inviting its delegates and members to kneel because they hate our flag and are embarrassed by our country. That's nice. Then you had the opening prayer.
I was a stranger, and you had the nerve to build a wall, while at the same time you have in the harbor there in New York a Statue of Liberty saying, give me your tired, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Jesus will say, America, if you don't get your act together, you may well go to hell. Why? Because inasmuch as you do it to the least of these, my sisters and brothers, you are also doing it unto me. We need to unmute the mic.
Well, maybe we should feel lucky. At least he didn't ask God to strike down Donald Trump. But why would he do that? Because now they just omit God from the Pledge of Allegiance. Friends, this is not edited.
To start our program today, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That wasn't the only time. Here's the LGBTQ caucus meeting.
Hello, everybody. If you don't have a flag, I have flags here right in front of me. Please place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Here's Fredo's brother, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
The European virus infected the Northeast while the White House was still fixated on China. The virus had been attacking us for months before they even knew it was here.
Remember when Democrats criticized President Trump for calling it the Chinese virus? He's racist. Now you have a governor doing China's bidding and calling it the European virus. Whatever happened to offending our allies? And the news from Cuomo's appearance was that he's publishing a book in October titled American Crisis. Crown, the company publishing the book, called it, quote, a remarkable portrait of leadership during crisis and a gritty story of gut-wrenching choices that point the way to a safer future for us all, and, quote, a powerful testament to true leadership in times of extreme crisis. New York has had the most coronavirus deaths of any state, over 25,000. Over 6,600 of those occurred in nursing homes, where he had a policy similar to Gretchen Whitmer, where COVID-19 patients were sent to nursing homes to recuperate, but ended up passing the virus around the facilities at the same time. If Andrew Cuomo is going to cash in on his supposed leadership during the pandemic, maybe all of those families who lost elderly loved ones in a nursing home because of his leadership should file a class action suit to claim a piece of the proceeds. Just a thought. Speaking of Governor Whitmer, here she is on Monday without even a hint of irony.
When we work together, we can accomplish anything. After all, democracy is a team sport.
If democracy is a team sport, why have you issued nearly 200 executive orders and hid behind a 1945 emergency powers law to do so? The legislature asked to be part of the strategy, but you don't have time for that. You're too busy writing executive orders, creating any mandate you damn well please. But she wasn't done.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will lead by example. It'll be science, not politics or ego, that will drive their decisions.
What data are you using? What's science? Nobody seems to know, and of course, no one in the Lansing media has the brass to ask. No Democrat convention would be complete without Our Lady of Perpetual Sorrow, Michelle Obama.
They watch in horror as children are torn from their families and thrown into cages.
That statement was so egregiously false, even the Associated Press couldn't let it slide, and subjected it to a fact check. Quote, Trump used facilities that were built during the Obama-Biden administration to house children at the border. They are chain-link enclosures inside border facilities where migrants were temporarily housed, separated by sex and age, end quote. Michelle Obama didn't have time to get into those details. She was too busy wagging her finger at us about white privilege from her $12 million Hamptons mansion. Or was it the $8.1 million mansion in Washington, D.C.? I couldn't tell. Michelle Obama is just another Democrat lying to us about what her own husband did. President Trump, incidentally, ended the Obama-Biden policy. Does it give you comfort that the next potential president literally speaks like a broken record?
That's the kind of first lady this Jill Biden will be.
And then there's Bill Clinton. He has the gall to lecture President Trump about behavior in the Oval Office.
At a time like this, the Oval Office should be a command center. Instead, it's a storm center. There's only chaos. Just one thing never changes: his determination to deny responsibility and shift the blame.
Let's bring a little levity to the program now. The post office is a disaster, and it has been for decades. I don't need to tell you that. But now that the Postal Service Board of Governors has appointed a businessman to run the place, which ran a $9 billion deficit last year, the swamp is coming unglued, specifically the postal unions and their enablers in the Democrat Party. They're exploiting mail-in voting. That's the hook that can scare people. We'll talk more about that in a bit. The post office has major budget problems. So who's swooping in with the fail-safe solution? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Warning, this is real.
Hello, everyone. I have been thinking about ways to help you help the post office, and I think I've got an idea, and I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. So one of the best ways to support the post office is to buy stamps. What do you all think? Would you guys be down and excited if I set up a national progressive pen pal program? Do all the work of connecting you to somebody else. We would offer maybe some conversation prompts or postcard prompts, and even like a printable postcard format. You just send it out. Would you guys be down? Do you like that idea?
Democrats are pushing a conspiracy theory alleging Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, who has been on the job for about 3 months, is orchestrating slowdowns of the mail system to sabotage mail-in balloting for the November election. NPR reported the Postal Service has, quote, long been in financial trouble, having lost $9 billion last year. NPR said that. According to the agency, it generated $24.4 billion from first-class mail in 2019, a decrease of about $510 million from 2018. AOC's scheme would have to generate an additional 16.3 billion new pieces of first-class mail to eliminate that $9 billion gap. That's about 49 pen pal letters per American a year. Not per progressive activists or whoever wants to participate in their hair-bearing scheme. 49 pen pal letters per American. It's so interesting one of the most tech-savvy members of Congress would propose such an archaic solution. She's telling all of her supporters who use social media, texting, and technology to communicate, use this archaic system and archaic method to talk to each other. And for what? That does nothing to deal with the structural problems the system has to grapple with. That's specifically why Louis DeJoy was put in charge, and the unions know it. And the Democrats who protect the unions know it. When I come back, Kevin Kosar, who recently wrote about the problems with the post office, joins me. This is the Kyle Olson Show. Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Kevin Kosar of the R Street Institute recently wrote about the right way to bail out the post office, and he joins me now. So, Kevin, what is the single biggest problem that needs to be fixed right now, and maybe more importantly, can be fixed?
The biggest problem is that the Postal Service's revenues and operating costs are structurally out of balance. In short, it runs deficits year after year after year.
So it's as simple as that. So what is being done to fix that?
Just about nothing. Congress has not done postal reform since 2006, and that was a very modest bill. It didn't really try to reimagine what the agency should be doing in the 21st century. And that's, unfortunate, but we certainly have a time to take another crack at it, and we desperately need to. Paper mail is the main business of the Postal Service, and mail volume has dropped 33% since 2008 when the Great Recession hit. Most mail that is sent by businesses, government, not-for-profits, and a lot of them were moving to electronic communications, and then when the Great Recession hit, they just went whole hog and pulled a lot of their communication stuff out of paper. And, if you're a business, if you're trying to cover your costs, which the Postal Service is a government business, it's a government corporation. If you're trying to cover your costs and your main business is severely eroded, you're going to need to adjust your costs. And the Postal Service really struggles to do that because of a number of factors. You have Congress who dictates that the Postal Service must carry paper mail 6 days a week, even though the Postal Service doesn't want to do that. You have, a price cap. The Postal Service, for most of the postage it sells, can only raise its prices by the CPI. So it really doesn't have to do with consumer demand. It's just set in statute. It's one thing after another that has kind of tied the agency up and put it in a spot where if we're not careful, taxpayers are going to have to bail it out.
So right now, the way I see it is this whole vote by mail situation is sort of being exploited, I think, to sort of raise alarm and bring attention to the fact or the notion that the Postal Service needs more money. But what we don't really get a handle on, with the exception of your piece and maybe some others, is what is actually what the Postal Service is actually spending its money on, because the vast majority of the money goes to personnel, which makes sense. I mean, that's I think that's fairly typical for a government type of agencies. Schools are similar. But explain a little bit the retirement obligations and where exactly the money is going. And if they were to get a bailout, we've heard anywhere from, the union has said we need $35 billion. It could be as high as $75 billion. Where is that money going? And is that actually going to fix the problem?
Yeah. Throwing money at the Postal Service is just an inherently bad idea. Listeners may be worried that the Postal Service is going to go bankrupt and just, not open business one day. We don't have to worry about that happening for a very long time. The Postal Service has close to $14 billion in cash on hand. The CARES Act that was passed in March gave them additional $10 billion borrowing authority. So they got plenty of liquidity. I should also note that despite COVID, which is driving down paper mail, the Postal Service's revenues in Q3 of 2020 are actually $500 million higher than the revenues of Q3 in 2019. And that's because everybody is shopping online and a lot of parcels are surging into the Postal Service, more than it has ever received before. So the Postal Service is okay on kind of a day-to-day cash flow basis.
So then what's the, why are we having these emergency hearings? There was one Friday this week. There's more this coming week. What's with the emergency hearings?
This is a situation that is greatly divorced from the real problems of the Postal Service, is what we're talking about. There's been this whole panic created that there's this evil Trumpy plot to control the Postal Service, to cripple it, as the New York Times op-ed columnists have said, so that it can't deliver election mail, and somehow that's supposed to help Trump win re-election.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense, and it's a huge amount of drama driven, in great part by a lot of misunderstanding and flat-out misinformation. So, we got a Senate hearing today, which was mostly sober and fact-based. I think everybody can learn a lot from it. I hope people will be less likely to panic after having heard what came out in the hearing. There's going to be another hearing on Monday, and then Democrats in the House are going to force a vote on a bill that basically would just hand the Postal Service $25 billion and ask nothing in return. And I think the Senate will probably not act on it because the bill just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Why would the House Democrats do that?
They've been looking for an excuse to throw cash at the Postal Service for a long time. They are extremely close to the major postal unions. There are 4 of them, but there are 2 of those unions that the Democrats are very close to. The APWU and the NALC. Those are very long-time associations with Democrats. They've wanted more cash for the Postal Service for years, and they see this as the opportunity to get it.
Interesting, because both of those unions have endorsed Joe Biden for president, which, that's their right to do. But you would think, and this is what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me with this. I don't understand if Donald Trump has this scheme to slow down the mail, and I looked at their various reasons, and it basically comes down to the Postmaster General has proposed cutting hours, reducing pickup times and or routes and those sorts of things. But it seems to me if they want to elect Joe Biden, they're going to do everything they can to make sure all those ballots are being delivered. What am I missing?
Yeah. No, the whole conversation is nutty. I mean, one of the things I pointed out last night is that you had people freaking out that mail collection boxes were being removed in Portland, Oregon, and this was taken as a sign of vote suppression. And I said, last time I checked, Democrats tend to win that state in each presidential election again and again and again. So what exactly would this achieve? No, it doesn't. It doesn't make much sense. And look, the Postal Service does have $150 billion in unfunded obligation, pension, retiree health benefits, borrowing. It's got structural deficits. It needs some new equipment. It needs a brand new vehicle fleet, which is grossly outdated. And if Congress wants to put some money towards those specific purposes, then I think that's worth a discussion. But just throwing $25 billion at the Postal Service with no strings, that's just reckless.
Well, and there's this, as you alluded to, there's this hysteria about removing postal, the mail boxes. And the Obama administration removed thousands. It was like 14,000 boxes over the course of the Obama-Biden administration. But you know what? Every home, every apartment building, every office, you can leave your mail there in your mailbox, and the mailman or mail person, as we're supposed to say, will pick it up. And so this idea that just because they might be eliminating some public drop-off boxes and suddenly your ballot is not going to be counted is insanity. Do you think, as a result of this hearing in the Senate today, my guess is that the tenor in the hearing on Monday will be different because the Democrats will be running it. Kevin Kosar of the R Street Institute, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. I'm so glad to have back on the program Dr. Ronnie Jackson, former White House physician and Republican candidate for Congress in the 13th District in Texas. So it's been a couple weeks since I had you on and we last talked. And of course, a lot has happened. Have you seen anything, particularly Joe Biden's speech on Thursday night, that would make you rethink that he has cognitive decline?
No, I haven't seen anything, Kyle, that's really changed my mind. I mean, I think he did better than expected, I think, last night with his address. But, to be honest, let's just look at, put that in context. That was heavily rehearsed. It was with the teleprompter. The real test of, does he have the cognitive ability to do the job? And is there something cognitively that's changed over the last few years with him is going to be how he reacts, in an unrehearsed setting, and obviously I'd love to see the dates happen because I think that would be a big test and that would be a way to prove to the public, if he's interested in doing so, that he doesn't have any cognitive disability, would be to debate the president head to head in an unrehearsed fashion. And I think that would be a much different scenario than what we saw last night. But nothing's changed my mind. You still have to go back and you look at seeing countless times over the last few months where he's just completely lost his train of thought and he can't figure out what's going on or where he's at or what he was talking about or what the issue was. And he just gets frustrated and he just abandons the whole process and tries to move on to something else, but not in a very graceful way. So I haven't changed my mind about it.
Overcoming stuttering was a theme Thursday night. As you know, I think the Biden campaign, and he specifically has talked about, he had a stutter when he was younger. There was a very poignant moment Thursday night when there was a boy who was, giving a speech to the DNC, and he had a stutter. So they were focusing on that. So what I've been sort of reading into over the last several months is that the Biden campaign has been focusing on that. And saying, that was an issue for him in the past. But I don't remember, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember Joe Biden stuttering during the 70s, during the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. What do you think? Talk a little bit about sort of, the science of stuttering, and if they are using that, and if you think that they're using that to sort of paper over what else he may have going on.
Well, I don't know. I can't say I know a whole lot about the science of stuttering. I'm not a speech pathologist or a psychologist, but I'll tell you that, we see people that stutter in youth all the time and they get over it when they learn how to get past it as they get older and they don't stutter anymore. And I think that's what you'll see with Joe Biden. I don't think that I do think that they're using that as an excuse because, like you said, you can clearly go and you can look back. It's not like Joe Biden's somebody who's brand new, has just been introduced to us. We've known Joe Biden for years now. There's tons and tons of footage all over the place of him, throughout his 50-something years in government that we can go back and reference. And this is something that's new. This is not something that's been happening in the past. And so for him to have had childhood stuttering and then overcome it for most of his entire adult life, and then suddenly it comes back in his at this point now that he's in this race and it's suddenly an issue. I don't buy that. I just think that's an effort to cover things up.
Do you see his apparent cognitive decline? Because when we last talked, you were very clear you're not his physician, you have not diagnosed him. But do you see that apparent issue growing as the campaign goes on, or do you think that's something that he can sort of explain away?
No, I think it's going to only grow as time goes on, assuming that he gets out and he actually has the 3 debates that he's committed to with President Trump. I think those are going to be very telling. And, if he gets back out on the campaign trail and starts campaigning again, which hopefully he'll be able to do, President Trump's doing some of that. And I think it's perfectly safe to do that if you do it in the right way right now. But they're really they're continuing to shelter him and keep him off the campaign trail. But if he gets back on the campaign trail, if he debates President Trump in these 3 debates that he's committed to, it's absolutely going to become a bigger issue as we move on, because it's going to put it out there on display for everybody. And I don't think that his debates and him on the campaign trail in an unprompted fashion are going to result in somewhat of a, polished performance like he may have had last night.
Right. There was news this week that his campaign will not be investing in a plane, which of course is, a very nice convenience for candidates because they can go wherever they want, whenever they want. They can take the media with them. They can use that as sort of a mobile office, as President Trump has done either with his personal plane or the or Air Force One. Do you think that that's a signal that he is just sort of going to, hunker down in his basement and he's going to try and run a campaign that way? And can that work?
I don't think it can work. I hope it doesn't work, but that's absolutely the plan. I think that's been the plan for a long time now. Their plan is just to keep him out of sight and just, have everybody else run on his behalf and basically run against the president. And that's all they're doing right now. They're not out there telling folks what Joe Biden can do for our country that President Trump can't do. They're all just tearing President Trump down, which is what they've been doing for the last 3.5 years. But I think their plan is to keep him as secluded and as sheltered as possible and have as little public exposure as they can possibly get away with. And I think the fact that they don't have a plane that they're contracting for, or they're going to have on, to fly him around the country to campaign is a big indicator that that's probably their. And I don't think it'll work. I don't think the American people buy it. I think the American people are going to demand that he get out, that he talk to the public, that he debate the president, and some of the stuff that's traditionally done, that he do it. If President Trump can do it safely. Politicians all over this country are doing it. 13. It can be done. They're not doing it because they want to shelter him, not because they're worried about coronavirus, although they'll use the coronavirus as an excuse.
What would happen if you're running for Congress and you go to your voters and you say, I'm not going to do any events, I'm not going to talk to anyone, or I'm just going to talk to you, I don't want to talk with you? What do you think the reaction would be in your district?
Well, in this district, it wouldn't fly at all. I mean, I would get summarily beat. I mean, it's just people here expect you to get out and talk to them, introduce yourself, tell your story, tell them what you can do for them, what you can do for your district, and what you can do for this country. And that's what he needs to be doing as well. Got out and is confident in the folks in the electorate. He has not. And he needs to do, if he wants to be president, he needs to get out, he needs to speak to the people, he needs to inspire confidence in the folks and demonstrate that he's capable of doing the job. And you from the very beginning that, I'm not his doctor and I've not taken care of him before, and I'm not saying these things as a diagnosis for Joe Biden. I'm saying these things as a concerned citizen. I do happen to be a doctor. I'm not practicing right now. I'm running for Congress. As a concerned, and you don't have to be a physician to see what's been going on for the last few months with him to be concerned about it. And I'm just parroting a lot of what people all over this country are saying.
Talk a little bit about, because you've been in the White House, you've worked right alongside President Trump. Talk a little bit about the demands on that office, and if someone is in cognitive decline, what exactly that means for the day-to-day activities.
Well, it's going to be devastating if that's the case, because, that's a physically demanding job, long hours, very little sleep, and you have to be mentally very sharp because you have to be able to multitask. You have to be able to handle multiple issues simultaneously, and you have to be able to remember a lot of stuff that you get pushed at you very quickly that you have to be able to fall back on later on and comment on or make decisions. I think that if you're not mentally 100% and cognitively as prepared as you can be and completely cognitively normal, you're going to have some real difficulty with that. And the physical nature of it, and the fact that you don't get a lot of sleep and things like that, it's only going to make the cognitive part worse if you don't have the cognitive reserve to do the job. So I think it's going to be a bastion in my mind based on what I've seen if Joe Biden ends up in that role.
Why do you think the media doesn't be more aggressive at trying to sort of get to the bottom of whether or not he has issues?
Well, because they despise President Trump. I mean, the media is just another branch. The far left, the liberal media, they're synonymous. I mean, the far left controls the most media to a large extent, and they despise President Trump. And we've seen that for 3.5 years now. And there's such a double standard. That's one of the reasons I got upset about this initially, is because President Trump never did anything to cause anyone to question his cognitive ability when he first became president.
Well, Dr. Ronnie Jackson, former White House physician and Republican candidate for Congress in the 13th District in Texas, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is the Kyle Olson Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. Patrick Carelci and Adriana Cortez have produced a 4-part series on the case of George Gage for their podcast, Red Pilled America. Here's a portion of a piece in the New York Times from January 2019 on the record of Kamala Harris. Quote, consider George Gage, an electrician with no criminal record who was charged in 1999 with sexually abusing his stepdaughter, who reported the allegations years later. The case largely hinged on the stepdaughter's testimony, and Mr. Gage was convicted. Afterward, the judge discovered that the prosecutor, which was Kamala Harris's office, had unlawfully held back potentially exculpatory evidence, including medical reports indicating that the stepdaughter had been repeatedly untruthful with law enforcement. Her mother even described her as, quote, a pathological liar who, quote, lives her lies. In 2015, when the case reached the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, Ms. Harris's prosecutors defended the conviction. They pointed out that Mr. Gage, while forced to act as his own lawyer, had not properly raised the legal issue in the lower court as the law required. The appellate judges acknowledged this impediment and sent the case to mediation, a clear signal for Ms. Harris to dismiss the case. When she refused to budge, the court upheld the conviction on that technicality. Mr. Gage is still in prison serving a 70-year sentence. So, Patrick, tell me what you have found out about Kamala Harris's handling of this specific case.
Well, what we found was kind of a very surprising and shocking kind of pattern of her as a prosecutor wanting to win at all costs. And what happened in this case was she had just announced her Senate race a couple months earlier. And right around the time that she announced her run for the Senate, she was faced with another scandal in the Attorney General's office in California, where they had a prosecutor that lied under oath. And the Ninth Circuit, this same court that was looking at the George Gage case, excoriated her and her office, and her specifically, over their lack of reprimanding and kind of going at this prosecutor that lied under oath. So fast forward a couple months later, and George Gage's case comes across their desk. And as you've highlighted in this article written by Laura Bazelon, Kamala Harris basically denied this evidence to George Gage based on a technicality. And we believe that she did it largely because she didn't want the embarrassment to hit her office right during her Senate run. And I think that what it did as well, another reason why there's never one reason for anything. And the other side of it is that this specific case really feeds into this whole kind of Me Too environment and this kind of believe them all narrative that the left has created. And in this case, it was a he said, she said, and the evidence, if you actually look at it, strong. I mean, we make the argument in our 4-part series called Lie Detector on Red Pilled America, that the evidence shows clearly that this man is innocent. That didn't matter to Kamala Harris's office. What mattered is her to win. And so she withheld it based on a technicality, and he's still in prison. I spoke to him yesterday. He's still trying, hopeful that he can get out. He's 81 years old, and he's serving a 70-year sentence. He's been in now for 21 and a half years.
In your research and investigating, was this a one-off sort of situation, or do you think this was a pattern that Kamala Harris was engaging in, whether it was district attorney or attorney general?
Well, I think you can even come out farther than that. I do see it as a pattern in prosecution in general, but her in particular, of wanting to seek power. And I think you see that, you saw that even when she was in the Senate, during the Judge Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, where she was basically believing immediately the accusers against Justice Kavanaugh, with no evidence in place for that. She even has taken the same position against her running mate, Joe Biden, on one of his accusers, saying that she believed the accuser. I think this pattern, when it comes to sexual assault, she is in this position to where if it allows her to gain power or to, win, or as a means to an end, she will follow that path that benefits her. And I think that you see that throughout they were going to, in the other case that I highlighted, this Baca case in California when she was the attorney general, they were not going to go after the prosecutor that literally lied under oath, and that many experts said that this person would not have been convicted if it wasn't for the lie of this prosecutor. So, and she was not going to reprimand this man. So I think that it is a pattern that you see, but I think what it really shows about her is her willingness to bend the truth if it benefits her at the moment.
When you've talked with George Gage, has he given you his opinion on her potentially being the next vice president?
He has not, but he has expressed his frustration. I mean, this is as I mentioned, 81-year-old black man that thought that if the evidence was put forth to an honest person, that he could be that he would be exonerated. He was incredibly surprised that he was initially charged with no evidence. And I mean, this man is literally behind bars with no evidence. And we go into this trial very, very detailed and point and show that this man is innocent. I think that he was surprised that once it reached Kamala Harris, office, that they didn't do the right thing. I mean, these judges on the Ninth Circuit, which is famously known as a left-leaning court, were incredibly troubled by this conviction, and it's right all there on tape. They just started live streaming their trials or their hearings, and it's all right there. They express this incredible disdain or this problem with this conviction, and yet her office would not release this evidence. And I think that that was incredibly surprising to him as well.
So you have this case. You have the cases of, people being prosecuted for having marijuana, that sort of thing. She doesn't get a lot of criticism, I don't think, in the mainstream media. But you look at her record, and the way that the left, I think, paints her record is that she is sort of this conservative prosecutor that is, going after black people, and she's going after, pot smokers and all of that. Why do you think that she just gets a pass in the mainstream media?
Well, I mean, I think that the mainstream media and the Democrats are synonymous words. I think that ultimately she has been the golden child from the media for quite some time. We early on, were looking at Kamala Harris's donations and compared to other of her, to her competitors. Hollywood usually picks who the Democrat nominee is going to be. And you could look at their donations. And at that time, she had received the most donations from Hollywood. So long story short, she is their candidate. She's the media candidate. So she's going to get a pass on this. And the stunning thing is in this moment of the left, positioning their party as the party of criminal justice reform, they have put this person in the VP spot, and let's face it, she's going to at some point, take over for Joe Biden if she ends up winning. But they put this candidate there that has an abysmal criminal justice record, someone that does not even release evidence to people that have been wrongfully convicted or innocent. So I think that they give her a pass on this stuff because they think that that this record will appeal to conservatives, and so it will lighten the argument that they are some kind of radical left ticket. When she has shown time and time again that she will go after people based on this believe them all approach, or just based on will this gain me power? And but I think ultimately the media is giving her a pass because they think that she will appeal to a conservative audience because she has this quote unquote conservative prosecution record, which I don't think that her history shows that.
Which, of course, doesn't square with the left wing of the party, which, of course, I think is dominating the party. So where can people hear your four-part series?
They can hear it on any podcast platform. If you go to redpilledamerica.com, that's our home. But we broadcast out to every podcast platform in existence.
Great. Sounds good. Well, I hope everyone will listen to that and hear, more broadly about the background and history of Kamala Harris. I think it's important because you're not going to hear it from the mainstream media. So, Patrick Karelchi, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Thank you so much for joining me today. For more of my work, go to Breitbart.com or find me on Twitter, Kyle Olson 4. Use the same handle for Parler, Kyle Olson 4, KYLEOLSON and the number 4. This is the Kyle Olson Show.